There are mornings when your soul feels dry, your prayers feel empty, and anxiety whispers, you've drifted too far from God. But His message today is simple. You are not lost. You are not abandoned. Even in dryness, He draws you close, restores your soul, and breathes peace where rest once fled. Come, let Him renew you. Heavenly Father, as I come before you this morning, my heart feels dry and my soul trembles beneath the weight of anxiety. Yet, I trust that you see me even here. I surrender my striving, my fear, and my restless nights into your hands. Speak your message today over my dryness. Let your living water flow again. Quiet the noise within me. Silence every accusation that says I've drifted too far. Remind me that you, my shepherd, restore my soul even when I feel nothing. Lead me beside your still waters and guide me back into peaceful rest. I breathe in your presence now, trusting that even in my emptiness, you are enough. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. There are mornings when your soul feels empty before your feet even touch the floor. You wake up not with excitement but with a heaviness you cannot fully explain. The weight of spiritual dryness presses on your chest like an invisible stone, and the anxiety that often follows whispers questions you're too weary to answer. Why do I feel distant from God? Has He turned away? Am I doing something wrong? These thoughts swirl as you open your eyes, leaving you restless after yet another night where sleep was brief and broken. This is God's message today for you. Beloved, even in your dryness, I am near. As we step into this morning prayer together, know that spiritual dryness does not mean abandonment. It is a place where God often does His most intimate work, restoring your soul just as Psalm 23 promises. The mind often tricks us into believing that a lack of emotion means a lack of presence. When anxiety creeps into the heart, it magnifies every silent moment and turns it into fear. You may wonder why, after praying so faithfully, you still wake up feeling numb. But God's message today is not one of condemnation, but of compassion. Morning prayer is not about feeling something powerful. It is about meeting God, even in the stillness. Psalm 23 begins with assurance, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want." That promise remains true. Even when your emotions feel distant and your spirit feels dry, the shepherd has not left you. He walks beside you, guiding you quietly, even when you can't perceive it. Last night, sleep may have eluded you as anxious thoughts circled endlessly in your mind. You may have replayed conversations, worries, or fears, unable to silence the inner noise long enough to find rest. Anxiety often amplifies at night because the world grows quiet and you are left alone with your thoughts. But God's message today cuts through that noise. Be still and know that I am God. Morning prayer invites you to release those anxious spirals and breathe in the peace that comes from surrender. Sleep may have failed you last night, but this morning, God offers something deeper: rest for your soul. In spiritual dryness, shame often follows close behind. The enemy whispers accusations. You should be stronger than this. You shouldn't feel this way. You're a bad Christian. But God's message today silences those lies with His truth. Psalm 23 speaks directly to the weary. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. Notice that it is God who leads, who restores, who initiates the You are not responsible for manufacturing spiritual life. Your role is to follow and receive. Morning prayer allows you to rest in this truth, even when your heart feels weak. Dryness does not disqualify you from God's love or attention. In fact, spiritual dryness often signals a sacred hunger growing within you, a deeper longing for intimacy with God that surface emotions cannot satisfy. God's message today is tender. I see your thirst. I see your hunger. And I am drawing you closer. Psalm 23's imagery of still waters reminds you that God provides peace even when emotions run dry. Morning prayer becomes your meeting place with the one who quenches that thirst. who promises living water to refresh your weary soul. Anxiety often presents itself as an overwhelming desire to control your feelings, your spiritual progress, even your connection with God. But control only leads to frustration and greater restlessness. God's message today invites you to release control and trust His leadership. Psalm 23 shows a shepherd who leads, not a sheep who must navigate alone. Morning prayer is your surrender, your humble acknowledgement that you do not need to carry the burden of your own restoration. Surrender. You make space for God's grace to move freely and deeply within you. Sleep becomes elusive when your mind refuses to let go. The more you try to force rest, the more it slips through your fingers. The same is true for spiritual rest. God's message today encourages you to cease striving. Come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Morning prayer offers you this invitation anew. Today, you don't need to fix yourself. You don't need to force feelings. You only need to come as you are and let God's Spirit gently lead you beside His still waters. As we close this morning prayer, hold on to this truth. Your dryness is not a sign of God's absence, but a sacred space where He is preparing something new. God's message today is one of hope, not despair. Psalm 23 assures you that the shepherd restores your soul. Anxiety may continue to whisper, but it does not get the final word. Sleep may have been stolen last night, but peace is available right now. Breathe in His presence. Let this morning be the beginning of renewed trust and quiet confidence that even in dryness, God is working. His faithfulness has not changed. His love remains constant, and He walks beside you today and always. This morning, let God's message today wash over your weary heart. You are not broken. You are thirsty. The dryness you feel is not evidence of failure, but proof of longing. The ache you carry testifies to the sacred hunger God has placed within you. Anxiety wants you to believe that this emptiness means you're spiritually defective, that you've disappointed God somehow. But the truth whispered from heaven is far different. Your thirst signals life, not loss. Like parched ground waiting for rain, your soul is preparing to receive again. Psalm 23 assures you, He restores my soul. Restoration doesn't begin with perfection, it begins with hunger. This morning prayer is your holy surrender, a returning to the shepherd who knows how to quench what feels unsatisfied. Anxiety often wraps itself around this dryness, amplifying fear that you may never feel close to God again. Yet God's message today cuts through that anxiety with divine reassurance. I have not left you. My presence never departs. Your emotions may fluctuate, but His faithfulness remains constant. Psalm 23 promises that even when you walk through valleys, He is with you. Morning prayer is not a performance, but a posture, a quiet offering of your thirsty soul to the one who restores. God sees your hidden battle. He knows the silent moments when you wonder why passion feels distant, and still He stays close, leading you gently toward still waters. Last night's sleep may have been elusive, your mind racing with questions, replaying conversations, or worrying about tomorrow. That restlessness is not foreign to God. His message today speaks directly into your sleepless anxiety. I give sleep to my beloved. Even when sleep escapes you, His peace remains available. Morning prayer becomes the doorway into that peace, inviting you to lay down what you couldn't control overnight. Sleep may have failed your body, but it doesn't have to steal your soul's rest. Right now, God stands ready to calm the storm inside you. The voice of the enemy often twists dryness into shame, accusing you of spiritual laziness or disconnection. But God's message today declares the opposite. You are seen, loved, and being tenderly led back into fullness. Psalm 23 gently reminds us, He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. Restoration is not a task you perform, it is a gift you receive. Morning prayer becomes your sacred place of receiving, not achieving. Even when your heart feels empty, your willingness to sit before God is a beautiful act of trust. that He cherishes deeply. God understands how anxiety tries to take control, controlling emotions, outcomes, and even your spiritual progress. The harder you try to fix yourself, the more frustrated you become. But God's message today whispers, release control and trust me. Psalm 23 paints the portrait of a shepherd who leads, not a sheep who must navigate alone. Morning prayer offers you the gift of surrender, where you exchange your anxious grip for His gentle hand. Sleep returns not when you've figured everything out, but when you finally let go. Anxiety thrives on the illusion of control. It convinces you that if you just pray harder, perform better, or feel more, you'll finally reconnect with God. But your shepherd asks something far simpler: trust. Psalm 23 assures you that He leads you even through dryness. Morning prayer is where you unclench your hands and say, Father, I cannot make my heart feel what it doesn't, but I trust you to restore me. In that surrender, peace begins to flow like quiet streams through parched land. Even in your struggle to sleep, know that God's grace covers your restlessness. His message today speaks gently. You are not held captive by your sleeplessness. My peace guards your heart and mind. Psalm 23 offers the invitation to lie down in green pastures, a promise of deep, nourishing rest. Morning prayer welcomes this peace to settle your mind, steady your breath, and anchor your soul as you step into today's unknowns. Sleep may have been stolen last night, but peace can reign this morning. As we close this portion of morning prayer, hold fast to the truth that your spiritual thirst is not rejection, it is invitation. God's message today assures you that dryness is often the doorway into deeper intimacy. Psalm 23 promises restoration, and the shepherd never abandons his sheep. Anxiety may continue to whisper, but its voice grows weaker beneath the sound of God's steady presence. Sleep may return tonight, but even now, rest is being born within you. You are not broken, you are thirsty, and your thirst is drawing you closer to the living water who restores all things. This morning, the cry of your thirsty soul rises again, longing for something you cannot quite touch. Psalm 42 captures your heart's silent ache. As the deer pants for streams of water, so my soul pants for you, my God. You may feel empty, but this hunger is holy. God's message today reminds you that your longing is proof that He is near, not far. The enemy uses anxiety to twist your hunger into fear, making you believe that you've somehow drifted beyond God's reach. But the truth is that your very thirst is evidence that your shepherd is drawing you closer. Morning prayer invites you to bring this thirst openly before God, without shame, trusting that He alone can satisfy what feels dry and barren within you. Anxiety often thrives in the silence, convincing you that your prayers are ineffective and that your spiritual dryness is a sign of failure. But God's message today gently corrects that lie. I see you. I hear you. Your silent groans are precious to me. Psalm 23 reassures your trembling heart. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. Even when you feel nothing, your shepherd leads you carefully. Morning prayer becomes a sacred moment where you choose to trust His guidance, even when your emotions do not cooperate. Your prayers are not lost in the void. They rise as a sweet fragrance before the throne of grace. Last night, anxiety may have robbed you of sleep again, filling your mind with questions and worries that seem to have no answer. You may have tossed and turned, longing for rest that wouldn't come. But God's message today offers a greater rest for your soul, even when sleep is stolen. He promises peace that surpasses understanding. Morning prayer is your invitation into that peace, where your restless mind can find quiet and your anxious heart can breathe again. Sleep may have failed you, but peace does not depend on perfect rest. It flows from perfect surrender. Spiritual dryness often feels like standing in a desert with no end in sight. The landscape of your soul seems barren, and anxiety whispers that you will be stuck here forever. But God's message today paints a different picture. Behold, I am doing a new thing. Now it springs up. Do you not perceive it? Even in the desert, rivers of living water are forming beneath the surface. Psalm 23 assures you that your shepherd is leading you through this dry land, not abandoning you in it. Morning prayer opens your eyes to see glimpses of his hidden work, even when the surface feels parched. Anxiety can make you question your very identity as a child of God, accusing you of being distant, disqualified, or forgotten. But God's message today is steady and unchanging. You are mine. Psalm 23's promise is not contingent on your feelings, but on his covenant love. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life. Morning prayer becomes a declaration of truth over your anxious mind, breaking the cycle of fear with the certainty of his faithful presence. Sleep returns when your soul rests in this unshakable identity. Even in your dryness, your shepherd sees every unspoken cry, every tear shed in the quiet of night. God's message today whispers comfort. I collect your tears in my bottle. None are lost. Psalm 23 leads you back to this place of comfort, where still waters wait to refresh your parched soul. Morning prayer becomes your meeting place with the God who not only sees your suffering, but enters into it with you. His compassion runs deeper than your anxiety, and his peace is stronger than your sleepless nights. Anxiety often convinces you that you must fix yourself before you can draw near to God again. But God's message today gently removes that burden. Come to me as you are. Psalm 23 paints the image of a shepherd who seeks his sheep, even when they wander or grow weary. Morning prayer invites you to lay aside the heavy yoke of self-effort and step into the ease of his grace. Sleep returns not when perfection is achieved, but when surrender is embraced. You are not responsible for your own restoration. That work belongs to your shepherd. As this portion of morning prayer closes, let your thirsty soul find comfort in the truth that God meets you even here. Your spiritual dryness is not abandonment, but preparation for new waters. God's message today breathes hope into your wilderness. I am with you. I am restoring you. Psalm 23 remains your anthem, your anchor, your assurance that the shepherd's care never wavers. Anxiety may continue to stir, but peace stands firm beneath it. Sleep may have been stolen, but restoration is already underway. Trust the process. Trust the shepherd. Trust that even in thirst, you are deeply loved. The wilderness you feel within is not unfamiliar to God. Spiritual dryness can feel like an endless desert stretching far beyond what your eyes can see. Yet even deserts serve a holy purpose. God's message today assures you that the dry places of your soul are not punishment but preparation. He is enlarging your capacity to hold more of his presence, stretching your roots deeper into his truth. Psalm 23 whispers again, He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. Morning prayer becomes your gentle reminder that the shepherd's hand is guiding you through this wilderness, even when your emotions can't detect his nearness. Anxiety feeds on your fear that you'll remain stuck in this barren place forever. It magnifies every dry moment into a narrative of hopelessness. But God's message today speaks a better story. I am doing a new thing. Rivers will flow again. The dryness is not the end of your story. It is the soil where new life is quietly being prepared. Morning prayer is your place to surrender these anxious fears and exchange them for divine promises. Though sleep may have been restless, peace is still within reach as you trust the one who sees the streams forming beneath the surface. Sleep becomes difficult when your heart wrestles with unanswered questions. You may have laid awake wondering if God hears you, if your prayers matter, or if you've somehow wandered too far. But God's message today gently silences these doubts. Before you call, I will answer. While you are still speaking, I hear. Psalm 23's assurance holds steady even in the silence. He makes me lie down in green pastures. Morning prayer is not dependent on how much you say or feel, but on His faithful listening ear. He hears even the quiet ache of your spirit. The enemy often uses this dry season to plant seeds of discouragement, convincing you that spiritual numbness equals spiritual death. But God's message today breathes life into what feels barren. I have not abandoned you. I am cultivating something deeper. Psalm 23 shows a shepherd who is always active, even when the sheep do not perceive his work. Morning prayer becomes your moment to confess, even if I feel nothing. I trust your hand upon me. Sleep can return as you release the heavy burden of feeling responsible for your own revival. Anxiety presses you to demand instant solutions, but God often works through sacred slowness. His message today invites you to rest in His pace. Be patient, for I am not finished. Psalm 23's green pastures are not rushed into existence. They grow under the steady care of the shepherd. Morning prayer slows your racing thoughts and anchors you in His sovereign timing. Even when sleep escapes you, trust that God's work within your dryness unfolds perfectly. One quiet moment at a time. Your shepherd knows that beneath every dry surface lies hidden potential for new life. God's message today lifts your eyes to see beyond what anxiety tells you. Beneath this dryness, He is deepening your roots, strengthening your spirit for what's ahead. Psalm 23's still waters await your arrival, and morning prayer is your steady walk toward them. Sleep may not have come easily, but divine peace is here now, covering your mind and calming your breath as you surrender afresh. Even now, your shepherd prepares restoration that you cannot yet see. God's message today reminds you that He is working in layers, healing you not with quick fixes, but with lasting depth. Psalm 23 reflects this slow, steady restoration that cannot be rushed. Morning prayer becomes your invitation to release frustration and embrace trust. Sleep will return as your anxious striving melts beneath His unhurried hand. Rest comes as you declare, Lord, I trust the pace of your healing. As this morning prayer settles into your soul, may you breathe deeply and remember that dryness is never permanent with God. His message today assures you that even in your wilderness, rivers are being prepared. Psalm 23 remains your anthem of hope. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Anxiety may rise, but it will not prevail. Sleepless nights may linger, but peace will take root. You are being led, held, and restored by the one who never leaves His beloved. Thirsty for anxiety often takes advantage of spiritual dryness, whispering that you've somehow lost your connection to God, that you are slipping further away, unnoticed and unworthy. But God's message today pierces through that lie. You are not forgotten. I am closer than your very breath. Psalm 23 declares with certainty, even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Morning prayer becomes a safe haven where you are reminded that your shepherd never loses sight of his sheep, even when the sheep can no longer see the shepherd clearly. Sleep may have eluded you last night, but His faithful presence stood guard beside you, even through your restless hours. The voice of shame often disguises itself as self-criticism during dry seasons. Anxiety leads you to question whether your current spiritual state is evidence of failure or weakness, yet God's message today answers that accusation. My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in your weakness. Psalm 23 assures you that the shepherd restores, not rejects, the weary soul. Morning prayer allows you to release the heavy burden of self-judgment and rest in the unchanging truth of divine mercy. Sleep returns as your soul is freed from the weight of unearned guilt. You may have spent much of the night trying to silence your racing thoughts, bargaining with your mind for rest that never seemed to come. But God's message today reminds you that He offers a peace that does not depend on your ability to calm yourself. His peace surpasses understanding, even when your thoughts are still tangled. Psalm 23 invites you to imagine lying down in green pastures, cradled by divine care. Morning prayer leads you gently to that quiet place where sleep may return, not through effort, but through surrender. When your heart grows weary, anxiety often feeds on the unknown, crafting terrifying narratives of what might happen if the dryness continues. What if I never feel close to God again? What if my faith is fading? God's message today answers those fears with His unchanging promise. Nothing can separate you from my love. Psalm 23 reveals a shepherd who pursues his sheep all the days of their lives. Morning prayer becomes a daily reminder that even when your feelings fail you, God's faithfulness never will. Sleep comes as these truths settle into the core of your being. There is a gentle truth hidden in this season of dryness. Hunger itself is grace. The fact that you long for God, even in your emptiness, is evidence of His work within you. God's message today whispers, "Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be filled." Psalm 23's promise of restoration applies even when you feel incapable of generating passion or zeal. Morning prayer becomes an act of faith, a simple offering of your thirst to the one who satisfies. Sleep finds you as you release the pressure to produce what only God can provide. Anxiety often tricks you into believing that others are progressing while you remain stagnant, that you are falling behind in your walk with God. But God's message today reassures you. I am writing your story at my perfect pace. Psalm 23 portrays a shepherd who leads each sheep individually, attending to their specific needs and timing. Morning prayer lifts your eyes from comparison and invites you to trust His personal care for your journey. Sleep returns as you rest in the assurance that you are exactly where you are meant to be, under His watchful eye. Even as you sit in this dry place, God is already planting seeds that will one day bloom into vibrant life. His message today declares, "See, I am doing a new thing, now it springs up. Do you not perceive it?" Psalm 23 echoes this hope with its picture of overflowing abundance. My cup overflows. Morning prayer allows you to glimpse these hidden seeds of hope, even before they break through the surface. Sleep becomes possible as your heart embraces the quiet confidence that new life is on its way, even if you cannot yet see it. As this portion of morning prayer concludes, remember that dryness is not the absence of God's love, but often the preparation for deeper intimacy. God's message today holds steady. I am restoring you. Psalm 23 remains your song of assurance as you walk through this valley. Anxiety may stir, but it cannot uproot what God is nurturing beneath the surface. Sleep may have been restless, but peace is growing even now. Trust the quiet work of your shepherd, who is faithfully leading you into renewal, one gentle step at a time. Even when prayer feels empty, when words feel hollow and your spirit struggles to engage, God's message today remains steadfast. I receive you as you are. You may sit in silence, feeling distant, unsure if your prayers rise beyond the ceiling. But the shepherd of Psalm 23 is not waiting for perfect words. He is present with your quiet heart. Morning prayer becomes less about speaking and more about simply showing up. In your stillness, God hears every unspoken desire, every wordless ache, and every silent tear. Sleep may have been restless, but now, in this moment, you are fully heard. Anxiety thrives on your discomfort with silence, urging you to believe that if you don't feel God, you've somehow failed Him. But God's message today breaks that lie apart. My love for you does not depend on your feelings. Psalm 23 reminds you that He leads you beside still waters regardless of your emotional state. Morning prayer invites you to simply sit in His presence, allowing your shepherd to minister to your heart in ways deeper than words. Sleep comes as you stop striving and allow His presence to quietly envelop you. But there are times when anxiety tells you that your spiritual dryness means your faith is fading. The absence of emotion feels like distance, and distance feels like danger. But God's message today is filled with grace. Faith is not measured by feeling, it's measured by trust. Psalm 23 promises restoration, not perfection. Morning prayer realigns your perspective, anchoring you in truth, even when passion feels absent. Sleep returns as you rest, not in your emotional highs, but in God's steady hand that holds you even in your lowest moments. The pressure to perform spiritually often intensifies during dry seasons. You feel you must force your prayers, generate passion, or display outward strength. But God's message today gently releases you from that exhausting cycle. Come to me weary, and I will give you rest. Psalm 23 paints the picture of a shepherd who leads tired sheep to green pastures, not ones who must strive to earn their place. Morning prayer offers this rest, reminding you that you are welcomed, loved, and cherished even in your emptiness. Sleep returns as you release the exhausting need to perform. Your shepherd understands the quiet battle happening beneath your silence. God's message today speaks into that hidden place. Even when you have no words, I am interceding for you. Psalm 23 leads you beside still waters, where words are unnecessary, where peace flows from His presence alone. Morning prayer becomes your shelter, your breathing space, your safe harbor when everything else feels uncertain. Sleep finds you as you allow the Spirit's gentle whispers to carry what your mouth cannot form. Anxiety will often try to convince you that spiritual dryness is permanent, that you'll always feel distant and disconnected. But God's message today declares, this season is temporary, restoration is coming. Psalm 23 assures you that the shepherd restores the soul fully, gently, and faithfully. Morning prayer strengthens your hope, not because you see immediate change, but because you trust His unchanging promise. Sleep returns as you rest in the assurance that this desert will not last forever. The shepherd's patience with you is immeasurable. God's message today reminds you, I am not frustrated with your weakness. Psalm 23's still waters symbolize His calm, unhurried approach to your healing. Morning prayer invites you to release any internal deadlines you've set for yourself. You do not need to rush or strive. You only need to stay close. Sleep becomes possible as you surrender your timetable to the God who knows exactly how to nurture your growth. As this portion of morning prayer settles into your heart, allow God's message today to anchor you once more. You are fully seen, deeply loved, and carefully led. Psalm 23 continues to echo its promise over your anxious thoughts, reminding you that your shepherd never grows weary of guiding you. Anxiety may still knock, and sleep may have been elusive, but peace is returning. You are not lost in your dryness, you are being led through it. Trust His steady hand to carry you forward. One breath at a time, the Spirit intercedes for you in ways your mind cannot comprehend. When anxiety steals your words and dryness paralyzes your prayers, God's message today offers comfort. My spirit prays for you with groanings too deep for words. Even when your lips are silent, your heart continues to cry out, and the Holy Spirit carries those cries directly to the Father. Psalm 23 affirms that you are never abandoned. He leads me in paths of righteousness for His name's sake. Morning prayer becomes your place of surrender, where you no longer strive to speak perfectly, but simply rest in God's complete understanding. Sleep, long stolen by anxious, racing thoughts, can return as you trust that heaven hears even your silence. Anxiety often convinces you that if you can't express your prayers clearly, they lose power. It whispers that without the right words, God won't respond. But God's message today assures you that His hearing is not limited by your vocabulary. He sees beneath your surface, reaching into the very depths of your being. Psalm 23's shepherd knows every silent plea, every unspoken longing, and every tear you never had the strength to shed. Morning prayer invites you to release the pressure to speak, resting instead in His perfect knowledge of your heart. Sleep comes as you allow this truth to calm your anxious striving. There are nights when sleep refuses to come because your mind desperately tries to organize its many worries, anxieties, and unanswered questions. The harder you attempt to untangle them, the tighter they grip you. But God's message today whispers, "Be still and know that I am God." Psalm 23 leads you beside still waters, even in the midst of mental storms. Morning prayer gently guides you away from the need to solve every problem and toward simple trust. Sleep becomes possible not when your problems disappear, but when you rest in the one who holds every answer. In spiritual dryness, you may fear that your faith has weakened beyond repair. The absence of feeling makes you question your connection to God. But God's message today reassures you, I am the author and finisher of your faith. Your shepherd remains committed to your growth, regardless of your emotions. Psalm 23's promise is not based on your strength, but on his unwavering faithfulness. Morning prayer becomes your place to release self-condemnation and accept his ongoing work in your heart. Sleep settles over you like a warm covering as you trust that your faith remains secure in his hands. Anxiety thrives on timelines. It whispers, you should be further along by now. You should feel better already. But God's message today silences that pressure. My timing is perfect. Psalm 23 shows a shepherd who leads with patience, not urgency. Morning prayer allows you to let go of self-imposed deadlines and rest in God's sovereign pace. Sleep finds you as you surrender your expectations, allowing him to unfold his restoration at just the right moment. Even when you feel spiritually dry, the Spirit continues to cultivate life beneath the surface. God's message today speaks hope. I am planting seeds you cannot yet see. Psalm 23 assures you that goodness and mercy are still pursuing you. Morning prayer invites you to believe in the unseen work of your shepherd, trusting that the fruit will emerge in due season. Sleep returns as you find peace, not in visible change, but in quiet confidence that God is always working on your behalf. The Spirit's groanings are perfect prayers when yours feel weak. God's message today offers this assurance. My Spirit fills in the gaps where your words fail. Psalm 23 continues to lead you forward, step by gentle step. Morning prayer becomes your silent agreement with the Spirit's intercession, allowing you to rest even when you feel empty. Sleep arrives as you release your desperate need for perfect prayers and accept the Spirit's faithful advocacy. As this portion of morning prayer concludes, hold fast to God's message today. You are fully known, fully heard, and fully loved. Psalm 23's shepherd is guiding you through this season, speaking peace over your anxiety and rest over your sleepless nights. The Spirit continues to pray for you even when you cannot. Trust his unrelenting care as you take each breath, knowing that you are never alone in your dryness. Peace is returning and restoration is quietly unfolding within you. Even now, restoration has already begun, though your eyes may not yet see its full bloom. God's message today whispers softly to your anxious heart, I am at work within you. Spiritual dryness may still linger, but the shepherd of Psalm 23 is leading you with care. He restores my soul. Morning prayer invites you to open your heart to the quiet beginnings of healing already taking root. Sleep may have been elusive, but divine restoration works even through restless nights, gently preparing you for renewed strength. Anxiety often blinds you to the evidence of God's work. It amplifies what you lack and minimizes what he's already doing. But God's message today clears your vision. Look again, my hand is upon you. Psalm 23's green pastures may feel distant, but the shepherd is guiding you step by step, even through dry ground. Morning prayer becomes your space to refocus, to recognize his subtle but steady movement. Sleep returns as you shift your gaze from absence to the quiet presence that's always been near. You may wake after another sleepless night, wondering if any progress has been made at all. The silence feels endless, and hope flickers faintly. Yet God's message today reminds you, I work in silence too. Psalm 23 assures you that even when you lie down in green pastures, growth often happens beneath the surface. Morning prayer offers a moment to trust the unseen, knowing that God's hands are always busy shaping your soul, even when emotions feel stagnant. Sleep can settle over you as you yield to his invisible craftsmanship. Anxiety tempts you to evaluate your spiritual health by how you feel in any given moment, but God's message today redirects your focus. Faith is not a feeling, it's a foundation. Psalm 23's unwavering shepherd remains present whether or not you sense him. Morning prayer helps you release the exhausting cycle of self-evaluation and invites you to stand firmly on his unchanging promises. Sleep returns as you stop measuring your spiritual progress by fleeting emotions and instead rest in his enduring faithfulness. The enemy often whispers that since you feel dry, you must have drifted too far. But God's message today declares, "You are right where I am forming you." Psalm 23 reflects his perfect leadership through every terrain. Morning prayer draws you away from self-condemnation and into quiet assurance that dryness is not distance, but preparation. Sleep flows gently into your body when shame releases its grip and trust takes its place. There is a beauty in the slowness of God's restoration. While anxiety demands instant solutions, God patiently crafts lasting healing. His message today is clear: I am not in a hurry with your soul. Psalm 23's restoration unfolds like morning dew, quiet, steady, refreshing. Morning prayer becomes your daily reminder to embrace God's divine pace. Sleep finds you more easily when you release your anxious urgency and rest in his timeless care. Even when you feel like you're standing still, the shepherd is guiding your every step. God's message today offers comfort. My plan for you has never stalled. Psalm 23's promise is not dependent on your ability to move forward, but on his commitment to lead. Morning prayer invites you to relinquish control over your journey's pace and location. Sleep returns as you exhale the pressure to manufacture your own progress and inhale his peace. As this portion of morning prayer settles upon your spirit, embrace God's message today. Restoration is already unfolding, even in the quiet. Psalm 23 remains your compass through spiritual dryness, gently leading you from anxiety into peace, from sleepless nights into holy rest. The shepherd is faithfully restoring you, not in loud, dramatic displays, but in steady, tender care. Trust his hand, even in the silence, for he is working deeply within you. Anxiety often tells you that because you feel dry, you are exposed and vulnerable, that without the comfort of God's presence filling your emotions, you are left unprotected. But God's message today speaks firmly against that lie. You are covered under my wings. Psalm 91 declares with unshakable certainty, "He who dwells in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty." Even in this season of dryness, your shepherd continues to shield you from harm. Morning prayer becomes your shelter, your safe place beneath his covering. Sleep may have been stolen, but protection never departed. Even while you tossed in restlessness, God stood guard over your life. The enemy works to convince you that dryness equals exposure, that if you can't feel God's presence, then surely you are wide open to danger. But God's message today reassures your heart. My shield surrounds you whether or not you feel it. Psalm 23 echoes this truth as the shepherd walks closely beside his sheep, guiding and defending. Morning prayer allows you to step out from the blinding light of anxiety's lies and into the gentle shadow of divine protection. Sleep returns as you find safety in his unchanging defense. Sleep often feels impossible when your mind spins with worst-case scenarios, your body tense from constant vigilance. But God's message today calls you into his rest. I am your refuge. You are safe. Psalm 91's promise that angels are commanded concerning you brings assurance that unseen hands guard you through every sleepless night. Morning prayer invites you to exhale, releasing the false responsibility to protect yourself. Sleep flows back into your body as you trust that you are safely held beneath the wings of the Almighty. Anxiety tries to define your spiritual season by what you lack. It whispers that if you cannot sense his nearness, you are unworthy of his care. But God's message today cuts through that noise. My protection is based on my covenant, not your condition. Psalm 23 affirms that the shepherd's rod and staff comfort you through every valley. Morning prayer lifts your weary eyes to this truth. reminding you that you are always covered. Sleep gently arrives as your spirit releases the weight of self-doubt and leans fully into his faithfulness. There are nights when fear presses heavily against your chest, making it difficult to even draw a full breath. In those moments, anxiety convinces you that you are defenseless against spiritual attack. But God's message today thunders over your fear. I am your fortress. Psalm 91 assures you that no harm can overtake you when you rest in his shadow. Morning prayer becomes your stronghold, your declaration of safety in the face of unseen battles. Sleep returns as your body relaxes under the certainty that your defender never slumbers. You may wake feeling as if nothing has changed, as if the protection promised in Scripture remains hidden. But God's message today speaks gently. Much of my protection is invisible. Psalm 23's quiet leading and Psalm 91's angelic charge work in realms you cannot always perceive. Morning prayer helps you trust the unseen, to believe that though you may not feel safe, you are indeed covered. Sleep finds you as you release the demand to understand everything and simply abide under his wings. Anxiety thrives in the unknown, feeding on what you cannot control. It demands evidence of safety before it allows you to rest. But God's message today silences that demand. Faith is resting in what you do not yet see. Psalm 23 continues to guide you along right paths, even when those paths wind through dry places. Morning prayer calls you to lay down the burden of certainty and embrace the peace of trust. Sleep returns as you surrender the need to predict your future and rest in the hands of the shepherd. As this portion of morning prayer concludes, hold tightly to God's message today. You are hidden in my refuge. Psalm 91's shadow and Psalm 23's guidance remain constant through your dryness, anxiety, and sleepless nights. The shepherd's protection has never wavered. Though your emotions shift like waves, his covering remains like an unmovable mountain. Let peace return to your heart, knowing that even now you are sheltered, guarded, and deeply loved under his watchful care. The desert season you're walking through has a holy purpose far deeper than your anxiety can comprehend. God's message today whispers into your dryness. I am using this season to draw you closer to me. The absence of feelings does not signal distance. It often reveals a greater invitation into dependence. Psalm 23 assures you, he leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. Morning prayer becomes your quiet classroom where the shepherd teaches trust, even when emotions offer no confirmation. Sleep may have been fleeting, but your shepherd has been present, shaping you quietly through the night. Anxiety presses you to find quick solutions, to escape discomfort as fast as possible. But God's message today counters that urgency. I am forming depth, not just relief. Psalm 23's journey is not rushed. It is deliberate, patient, and purposeful. Morning prayer invites you to release the frantic search for instant comfort and embrace the slow unfolding of divine restoration. Sleep returns as your heart settles into God's steady rhythm, no longer racing ahead but learning to walk at the shepherd's pace. The wilderness feels threatening because it exposes everything you cannot control. You long for feelings of security, but dryness feels like exposure. Yet God's message today reassures you, this desert is where I meet you face to face. Psalm 23 paints a shepherd who is never absent from his flock, even in barren places. Morning prayer becomes your sanctuary, where you acknowledge the discomfort, yet find peace in his nearness. Sleep returns as you surrender control and allow the shepherd to guide you through terrain you don't yet understand. Anxiety constantly reminds you of what you lack, feeding the belief that spiritual dryness proves failure. But God's message today declares, I am more committed to your growth than your comfort. Psalm 23's restoring streams are not earned, but freely given in due time. Morning prayer invites you to lift your eyes above what you lack and gaze upon the shepherd who never stops leading. Sleep finds you as you abandon self-judgment and embrace God's tender, ongoing work within you. Even as you feel empty, unseen seeds of faith are quietly being planted. God's message today offers hope. I am building endurance and resilience within you. Psalm 23 reflects this patient care, as the shepherd leads through every valley and over every hill. Morning prayer reminds you that while emotions rise and fall, God's hand remains steady. Sleep becomes possible as you trust that these unseen seeds will one day bloom into strength and joy beyond what you can now imagine. Anxiety demands constant evidence of progress, but God's message today speaks a deeper peace. Rest in my timing, not your measurements. Psalm 23's paths of righteousness are winding, not linear. Morning prayer realigns your perspective, teaching you to celebrate each small step rather than mourn what seems unfinished. Sleep settles upon you as you relinquish the exhausting need to track your own progress, resting instead in your shepherd's faithful guidance. Even the silence you experience is not void of God's voice. God's message today whispers, I speak softly in your stillness. Psalm 23's still waters reflect not only rest, but also his gentle instruction. Morning prayer invites you to listen for the quiet nudges of grace that come without fanfare. Sleep returns as your ears grow attuned to these subtle, peaceful whispers that gently carry you through each night. As this portion of morning prayer closes, anchor your heart in God's message today. Your desert is not your destination. Psalm 23 remains your guiding melody, leading you through dryness into renewal, through anxiety into peace, and through sleepless nights into holy rest. The shepherd is shaping you with tender precision, preparing you for a harvest that will exceed your present understanding. Trust him fully, for even here you are deeply loved and never alone. Anxiety often tries to convince you that your lack of feelings in prayer means you've lost your faith completely. It whispers that you've wandered too far for God to reach you. But God's message today brings gentle clarity. Your faith is not lost, it is being refined. Psalm 23 assures you, even though I walk through the darkest valley, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Morning prayer becomes your anchor in this refining process, reminding you that even in darkness and dryness, your shepherd remains faithfully near. Sleep may have felt distant, but his hand has not let go of you through any sleepless hour. When your emotions fail to ignite passion for prayer, anxiety feeds on the silence, convincing you that your spiritual foundation is crumbling. But God's message today silences that fear. Faith is not a feeling, it is trusting me when you feel nothing. Psalm 23 affirms that your shepherd walks with you, leading you through the valley, not abandoning you in it. Morning prayer invites you to rest in this deeper faith, where trust rises even when emotions fade. Sleep finds you as your heart releases the pressure to feel and simply clings to the truth of his presence. There are nights when exhaustion and overthinking leave you even more restless. You replay every conversation, every mistake, every fear of what tomorrow holds. But God's message today offers you peace. Cast all your cares upon me, for I care for you. Psalm 23's green pastures invite you to lay down those worries at his feet. Morning prayer becomes your daily act of surrender, a holy exchange of burdens for peace. Sleep flows in as your mind releases its grip on every anxious thought, trusting the shepherd to hold what you cannot. Anxiety tricks you into believing that if you aren't spiritually strong every day, you are failing God. It demands a perfection you were never created to sustain. But God's message today breathes grace into your soul. My strength is made perfect in your weakness. Psalm 23 reminds you that your restoration is his work, not yours to manufacture. Morning prayer allows you to embrace your weakness and invite his power to fill every gap. Sleep becomes sweet again as you rest, knowing you're safe in the shepherd's unfailing arms. The dryness you feel does not mean God is distant. Often it means he is drawing you into a deeper dependence on him. God's message today assures you this season is not your undoing, it's your preparation. Psalm 23 reflects the shepherd's perfect pace as he leads you forward with great care. Morning prayer invites you to release your timeline and trust that the one who started this work in you will surely complete it. Sleep returns as you surrender to his steady, patient hands. Anxiety's voice tells you that others seem to thrive while you struggle in silence, as though you've been left behind spiritually. But God's message today gently reminds you, I lead each of my children personally, and I have not forgotten you. Psalm 23 paints this intimate picture of individual guidance and care. Morning prayer pulls you back into the security of his personal love and unique path for your life. Sleep settles over you as you let go of comparisons and rest in your shepherd's individual plan for you. Even in your silent prayers, where no words seem to rise, God sees every tear, every sigh, every trembling breath. His message today assures you, before a word is on your tongue, I know it completely. Psalm 23's still waters reflect the quiet places where he ministers to you in ways beyond words. Morning prayer becomes your silent offering, fully seen and received by the one who understands you completely. Sleep gently returns as your soul finds rest in being fully known, even without speaking. As this portion of morning prayer closes, may God's message today root deeply within you. You are not lost, you are not forgotten, and your faith is not failing. Psalm 23 stands as your unshakable foundation, guiding you through this valley into greater peace and deeper trust. Anxiety may still attempt to steal your rest, but it cannot overcome the shepherd's faithful care. Even now, restoration is unfolding quietly within you, and you are being led safely forward in his perfect love. You may not always recognize it, but beneath the dryness and silence, a hidden stream of God's grace flows steadily. God's message today gently assures you, though you see barrenness, I am sustaining you beneath the surface. Psalm 23 speaks of this quiet provision. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. Morning prayer becomes your reminder that God is never inactive. Even when your emotions feel empty, sleep may have slipped through your fingers last night, but divine sustenance held you quietly even as you lay awake. Anxiety magnifies what is absent, blinding you to what is present. It fixates on what you feel is lacking, convincing you that God's hand has somehow been withdrawn. But God's message today clears the fog. My hand has never left you. Psalm 23 assures you that the shepherd guides continually, even when the terrain seems desolate. Morning prayer invites you to shift your focus away from emptiness and toward the unseen stream of grace sustaining you every moment. Sleep returns as your soul exhales the pressure to see and simply trusts that God is always providing. Each night you may fight the same battle, lying awake and wondering if your dryness means you're losing your connection to God. But his message today is tender and firm. My work is deeper than your emotions. Psalm 23 shows that even when you cannot perceive movement, the shepherd still restores your soul. Morning prayer helps you release the exhausting need for visible progress and embrace the steady flow of God's quiet work. Sleep flows back into you as you surrender to his unseen grace. Anxiety often whispers that your inability to feel passion in prayer disqualifies you. But God's message today silences that accusation. My love for you is not measured by your emotional state. Psalm 23 affirms his patient, unchanging care. Morning prayer invites you to approach him as you are, knowing that his acceptance is not dependent on your performance. Sleep returns as you lay down the weight of guilt and receive the peace that comes from resting in his unconditional love. Even while you feel spiritually dry, the shepherd is cultivating depth that will later produce great fruit. God's message today assures you, the deeper the dryness, the stronger the roots. Psalm 23's green pastures are not reserved for the already strong, but for those who need restoration. Morning prayer becomes your daily watering, nourishing roots you cannot yet see growing. Sleep settles upon you as you trust the slow, steady growth taking place beneath the surface. Anxiety loves urgency. It pressures you to demand visible change now, feeding your restlessness. But God's message today quiets that urgency. I am not hurried with your soul. Psalm 23 reflects a shepherd who leads patiently, always attentive but never rushed. Morning prayer allows you to breathe deeply and release your own timelines. Sleep finds you as you let go of the frantic need for quick resolution and embrace his steady pace. Though you feel little progress, God's protection has never ceased. His message today reminds you, you are sheltered even in the silence. Psalm 23's rod and staff guide and protect you through unseen dangers. Morning prayer becomes your declaration of trust that even what you don't perceive, he controls. Sleep comes as you rest beneath his invisible covering, knowing you are guarded in every moment. As this portion of morning prayer concludes, hold close God's message today. The stream beneath your dryness is alive and flowing. Psalm 23 remains your steady promise through anxiety, sleepless nights, and spiritual silence. The shepherd sees your thirst, covers you with his grace, and continues to work quietly beneath what you feel. Trust his hands, for beneath your still surface, rivers are forming that will one day break forth in fullness and peace. Your hunger is heard even when no words escape your lips. God's message today whispers into your silent longing. I see your thirst. I honor your desire for me. The emptiness you feel is not rejection. It is evidence that your heart still longs for the shepherd's presence. Psalm 23 promises, he restores my soul, reminding you that even when passion feels distant, God's restoring hand is still at work. Morning prayer becomes your quiet cry, where your hunger itself becomes your offering. Sleep, though disrupted, cannot silence the fact that God fully receives even your weakest longing. Anxiety often manipulates your hunger into despair, convincing you that your longing means you're distant from God. But his message today brings reassurance. Longing for me is proof that I am near. Psalm 23 paints a shepherd intimately close, guiding each step even through seasons of dryness. Morning prayer invites you to see your hunger not as evidence of absence, but as a sacred sign of God's gentle pull upon your soul. Sleep begins to return as your heart shifts from panic to trust. Even when your nights are restless and your mind replays every fear, your soul's hunger still reaches heaven. God's message today assures you, every silent tear, every sleepless breath, I collect them all. Psalm 23 reveals his nurturing presence even in vulnerability. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. Morning prayer becomes your shelter, where even your sighs become prayers. Sleep wraps around you as you release each unspoken need into his hands. Anxiety frequently accuses you of spiritual failure when hunger persists without immediate satisfaction. But God's message today silences that lie. I am not withholding myself from you. I am expanding your capacity to receive. Psalm 23's promise of restoration is unfolding in layers far deeper than momentary feelings. Morning prayer allows you to trust that God's work often begins unseen, preparing your soul for a greater outpouring. Sleep returns as you release the demand for instant fulfillment. Your shepherd values your hunger more than your performance. God's message today reassures you, you don't have to strive for my attention. You already have my heart. Psalm 23 reflects this intimate care as the shepherd leads patiently and tenderly. Morning prayer invites you to simply rest in the truth that your desire is enough for today. Sleep becomes sweeter as you relinquish the exhausting pressure to do more, be more, or feel more. In the stillness of your dryness, seeds are quietly being planted. God's message today brings hope. I am preparing you for overflow. Psalm 23 declares, my cup overflows, promising a future abundance birthed from today's hunger. Morning prayer anchors you in the certainty that your current thirst is not the end, but the preparation for a greater filling. Sleep finds you as you trust the unseen process unfolding beneath your surface. Anxiety insists that hunger means something is wrong with your faith, but God's message today corrects that distortion. Hunger is a gift. It keeps you leaning on me. Psalm 23 continually affirms that the shepherd sustains his sheep even in seasons of longing. Morning prayer becomes your sacred space to lean in, trusting that your hunger is shaping you, not harming you. Sleep comes as your soul releases fear and embraces this gift of holy dependence. As this portion of morning prayer settles into your spirit, allow God's message today to root deeply. Your hunger is not your failure. It is my invitation. Psalm 23 stands as your steady guide, leading you from anxiety into peace, from sleepless nights into rest, and from emptiness into coming fullness. The shepherd sees your thirst, honors your longing, and promises that in due time, rivers of living water will overflow from within you. Rest tonight knowing that even now your hunger is heard, and your restoration is certain. The Spirit groans for you when your own words fail. God's message today gently embraces your silence. Even when you cannot pray, I intercede on your behalf. In your spiritual dryness, when your voice feels too weak to rise, the Holy Spirit carries your deepest needs to the Father. Psalm 23 assures you that your shepherd is guiding you even through the valleys where words run dry. Morning prayer becomes your resting place, where your silent presence before God is enough. Sleep may have eluded you, but His intercession has never ceased. Anxiety often condemns you for not knowing what to say in prayer, for struggling to articulate your heart's condition. But God's message today offers tender comfort. Your inability to find words does not limit my ability to hear. Psalm 23's shepherd does not require eloquence. He simply walks with you, fully aware of every unspoken ache. Morning prayer becomes your sanctuary, where silence is received as worship. Sleep returns as you release the pressure to perform and allow His Spirit to speak for you. During your restless nights, anxiety fills the silence with its own fearful narratives, amplifying your feelings of disconnection. But God's message today quiets those voices. The Spirit within you groans with wisdom beyond your understanding. Psalm 23 promises that His goodness and mercy follow you always, even when your own understanding falters. Morning prayer brings your mind back to the reality that you are not left to navigate this journey alone. Sleep finds you as you lean into the Spirit's perfect advocacy. The enemy seeks to convince you that prayer without words is weak, but God's message today corrects that deception. My strength is made perfect in your weakness. Psalm 23 reflects the shepherd's gentle leadership, guiding you with patience as you walk through the valley of spiritual dryness. Morning prayer invites you to rest in the truth that your weakness invites God's power, not His disappointment. Sleep returns as you surrender your fragile state into His capable hands. Anxiety feeds on your uncertainty, demanding that you have answers and clarity before you can rest. But God's message today offers peace. You do not need full understanding to trust me. Psalm 23 leads you beside still waters, even when the path ahead remains unclear. Morning prayer becomes your declaration of trust without full visibility, an act of faith in God's steady hand. Sleep settles upon you as you accept His invitation to rest without resolution. Even in your silent desperation, God's Spirit continually breathes life into your soul. His message today affirms, I am praying for you according to my perfect will. Psalm 23's assurance of comfort through every season remains unbroken. Morning prayer offers a space where you relinquish control and trust in divine intercession. Sleep returns as you recognize that the most effective prayers are often those uttered by the Spirit on your behalf. When exhaustion leaves you too depleted to engage spiritually, the Spirit never ceases His work. God's message today reminds you, I am sustaining you in ways you cannot see. Psalm 23 shows a shepherd who never slumbers, always attentive to your soul's need. Morning prayer becomes your quiet surrender, a resting in the constant intercession of heaven. Sleep comes as you release every remaining burden, confident that divine help surrounds you at every moment. As this portion of morning prayer closes, let God's message today anchor you. The Spirit's groanings carry what your heart cannot express. Psalm 23 remains your assurance that even in dryness, even in silence, you are fully heard, fully understood, and fully loved. Anxiety's accusations lose their grip in the face of God's tender intercession. As you lay down tonight, trust that your shepherd and his spirit are working in perfect harmony to restore, sustain, and carry you through every dry season. Peace is returning, and your soul is safe in his care. Anxiety often disrupts your very breath, tightening your chest and quickening your pulse as if each breath carries the weight of all your worries. But God's message today gently enters this tension. Breathe in my grace, breathe out your fear. Psalm 23 reminds you that your shepherd leads you beside still waters, offering calm to your restless soul. Morning prayer becomes your sacred breathing space, where every inhale draws in his peace and every exhale releases anxiety's grip. Sleep long distant begins to return as your body finds rhythm in his calming presence. When anxiety floods your thoughts, your breath becomes shallow, reflecting the panic within. But God's message today brings a quiet command: be still. Psalm 23's green pastures are not just physical places, but spiritual resting grounds where your breathing slows and your mind rests in his control. Morning prayer teaches you this rhythm of surrender, guiding you to inhale trust and exhale control. Sleep gently wraps around you as your body mirrors the steady assurance of God's nearness. Even as you wrestle with sleepless nights, trying to calm your spinning thoughts, God's message today offers you a practice of peace. With every breath, I am with you. Psalm 23 assures you of his constant presence, even in your most anxious hours. Morning prayer becomes your moment to align your breathing with his spirit, breathing in hope, breathing out despair. Sleep finds you as your body relaxes under the gentle rhythm of divine companion. Anxiety often convinces you that if you're not constantly doing, striving, or fixing, you're falling behind. But God's message today corrects that lie. Rest is not wasted time, it is sacred trust. Psalm 23 reflects the shepherd's gift of rest. He makes me lie down in green pastures. Morning prayer invites you to stop striving and simply receive the gift of rest. Sleep returns as your spirit releases the exhausting cycle of self-effort and welcomes his sustaining grace. When your mind resists slowing down, filling the silence with fears about tomorrow, God's message today offers comfort. I am already in your tomorrow. Psalm 23 promises that his goodness and mercy follow you all the days of your life. Morning prayer allows you to hand him your tomorrows, breathing out your anxieties and inhaling his sovereign peace. Sleep embraces you as you rest in the certainty that your shepherd holds both your present and your future. In spiritual dryness, even your breathing can feel labored, as though your soul itself is tired. But God's message today reassures you. I give breath to the weary. Psalm 23 leads you back to the still waters, where restoration begins with something as simple and sacred as breathing. Morning prayer becomes a holy rhythm. Exhale mercy, exhale worry, drawing you deeper into his rest. Sleep finds its way back as your soul synchronizes with his sustaining breath. Anxiety seeks to overwhelm you by shrinking your world to the present fear. But God's message today expands your vision. Lift your eyes to me. Psalm 23 lifts your gaze to the shepherd who leads beyond the valley. Morning prayer trains your heart to rise above the immediate storm, inhaling his greatness and exhaling the temporary weight of fear. Sleep gently returns as your perspective shifts from your problem to his presence. As this portion of morning prayer settles, allow God's message today to become your breath. My grace fills every breath you take. Psalm 23 remains your anchor, guiding you into deeper peace with every inhale and exhale. Anxiety may whisper, but its voice weakens as you practice this sacred breathing. Tonight, sleep returns, not because your circumstances have changed, but because your breathing is now synchronized with the gentle rhythm of your shepherd's care. In his breath, you find rest. Anxiety urges you to rush your healing, to demand that dryness end quickly, convincing you that peace should arrive instantly. But God's message today speaks with patient reassurance. Let me set the pace. Psalm 23 shows your shepherd guiding you with steady hands, not hurried steps. He leads me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Morning prayer invites you to release your timetable and trust his perfect pacing. Sleep returns as your heart surrenders the exhausting demand for immediate resolution. The pressure to be restored quickly feeds your restlessness. You may think, why am I still here? Why haven't I moved past this? But God's message today gently answers. Healing unfolds layer by layer. Psalm 23 reflects the shepherd's deep, slow work, crafting lasting change that cannot be rushed. Morning prayer offers you the freedom to accept each small measure of progress as his perfect work. Sleep settles upon you as you release the burden of self-imposed deadlines and rest in divine timing. Even in your sleepless nights, God's restoration is quietly unfolding. His message today reminds you, I work while you wait. Psalm 23's still waters symbolize not quick fixes, but deep, steady refreshment. Morning prayer draws your focus away from what feels stagnant and towards the unseen movement beneath the surface. Sleep returns as you trust that the shepherd's hand remains active, even when you cannot perceive the full extent of his work. Anxiety often stirs when you compare your journey to others, feeling as though you're falling behind. But God's message today speaks personally. I lead you according to your needs. Psalm 23 portrays a shepherd intimately guiding each of his sheep, attentive to every unique pace. Morning prayer becomes your place to release comparisons and rest in the shepherd's individual care. Sleep finds you as you let go of measuring your progress against others and embrace the pace set for you alone. There is wisdom in the slowness of God's restoration. While anxiety demands speed, God shapes endurance and depth within you. His message today is steady. I build what will last. Psalm 23's restoration is not superficial but thorough, designed to strengthen you for what lies ahead. Morning prayer invites you into this enduring process where lasting peace replaces fleeting relief. Sleep gently wraps around you as you trust the durability of his careful work. Dryness tempts you to believe that progress has stalled, yet God's message today whispers, you are moving even when you feel still. Psalm 23's quiet guidance leads you forward in ways too gentle for your anxious mind to always detect. Morning prayer realigns your vision, helping you recognize subtle shifts and quiet growth. Sleep returns as you rest in the quiet assurance that you are being faithfully led, even when movement feels imperceptible. Even the moments of waiting are fertile ground for God's grace. His message today comforts you. The waiting is part of my work. Psalm 23 assures you that every step is ordained, even those that seem delayed. Morning prayer invites you to view waiting not as wasted time, but as sacred preparation. Sleep settles upon you as you embrace the holy work unfolding within each waiting moment. As this portion of morning prayer concludes, receive God's message today into the depths of your heart. My timing is perfect, and my work is complete. Psalm 23 continues to lead you through every anxious thought, every restless night, and every dry season. The shepherd's pace may be slower than your desires, but it is far wiser than your fears. Rest tonight knowing that your healing is unfolding exactly as it should, beneath the steady hand of your loving shepherd. Anxiety often intensifies as night approaches, filling your heart with dread that another sleepless battle is about to begin. But God's message today enters this space with calm assurance. I have designed even the night to restore you. Psalm 23 promises that your shepherd watches over you both by day and by night. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life. Morning prayer reminds you that God's care extends into the coming darkness. Sleep may have slipped away before, but tonight holds a new invitation into his restful embrace. As anxiety tightens its grip, convincing you that the night belongs to fear, God's message today gently whispers, the night belongs to me. Psalm 23 reflects a shepherd who never leaves his post, whose presence fills every shadow with light. Morning prayer prepares your heart to enter the evening not with dread, but with peace, knowing that your shepherd remains attentive even as you sleep. Sleep returns as you surrender the night into his capable hands. When your mind begins to race with what-ifs and unresolved worries, it feels impossible to quiet the internal noise. But God's message today offers a healing invitation. Lay your burdens at my feet. Psalm 23 leads you beside still waters, even in the hours when your mind feels stormy. Morning prayer trains your spirit to release each anxious thought, replacing it with trust that your shepherd is already at work while you rest. Sleep flows in as you relinquish every unfinished concern into his care. Anxiety convinces you that the night amplifies your weakness, that you are most vulnerable when you lie awake in the darkness. But God's message today reassures you. I am your refuge, even in the shadows. Psalm 23 paints the image of the shepherd's rod and staff providing comfort, protection, and nearness, even in the darkest valleys. Morning prayer becomes your declaration that you are never unguarded, never exposed, never truly alone. Sleep finds you as you rest beneath his unshakable covering. Each sleepless night may feel like a setback, but God's message today speaks gently into your disappointment. Even in restless hours, I am working within you. Psalm 23's restoration is not limited to your waking moments, but continues through the quiet of the night. Morning prayer invites you to see the night, not as wasted time, but as sacred ground where God's unseen hand shapes your soul. Sleep returns as you trust that every hour belongs to him. Anxiety often draws you into obsessive cycles, trying to resolve every fear before you allow yourself to sleep. But God's message today breaks that exhausting loop. You do not need to resolve everything before you rest. Psalm 23 reflects a shepherd who carries your burdens even while you sleep. Morning prayer invites you to place your concerns into his hands, knowing they are safer there than in your grasp. Sleep gently settles upon you as you release the illusion of control. Even when the dryness of your soul feels most profound, in the stillness of the night, God's message today offers reassurance. My spirit surrounds you even in your emptiness. Psalm 23 leads you to green pastures, not because you've earned them, but because of his loving pursuit. Morning prayer anchors you in this reality, calming your heart for the hours ahead. Sleep returns as you release the heaviness of emptiness into the fullness of his unfailing presence. As this portion of morning prayer concludes, let God's message today breathe peace into your spirit. The night is not your enemy, it is my invitation to rest. Psalm 23 continues to guide you from anxiety into peace, from restless nights into healing restoration. Your shepherd remains near, surrounding your heart, mind, and body with his tender watchfulness. As you enter this night, trust fully in the one who never sleeps and who holds you through every hour with unfailing love. The dry season may feel endless, as if your soul will never taste refreshing waters again. But God's message today breaks through that despair. Rivers will overflow again. What feels barren now is not the end of your story. Psalm 23 declares with hopeful certainty, "My cup overflows." The shepherd who leads you through dryness is also the one preparing in abundance that exceeds your present emptiness. Morning prayer invites you to lift your eyes and expect what is coming. Sleep finds you as hope replaces the weight of discouragement. Anxiety often insists that your current condition is permanent, that the dryness will stretch on indefinitely. But God's message today silences that lie. This season will give way to renewal. Psalm 23's overflowing cup is a promise secured by God's unchanging nature. Morning prayer anchors you in this divine certainty, reminding you that seasons shift under the shepherd's hand. Sleep returns as you release the fear of permanence and trust that restoration is already on its way. You may awaken from restless nights feeling as though nothing is changing, that your prayers remain unanswered and your hunger unmet. But God's message today whispers, I am preparing the floodgates. Psalm 23 assures you that goodness and mercy pursue you daily, even when progress feels invisible. Morning prayer helps your heart to wait with expectancy, knowing that beneath the surface, new streams are forming. Sleep gently settles upon you as your heart leans into the promise of future abundance. Anxiety presses you to believe that your spiritual barrenness is a reflection of who you are, but God's message today reassures you. Your dryness is not your identity. It is temporary ground I will soon saturate. Psalm 23's overflowing cup speaks to the fullness that awaits you. Morning prayer invites you to detach your identity from your feelings and root yourself in the shepherd's faithful work. Sleep finds you as you rest in this secure identity, no longer defined by your present emptiness. The longer the dryness lingers, the louder anxiety grows, tempting you to despair that God's promises have been delayed. But God's message today gently reminds you, I am never late. Psalm 23's restoration unfolds at precisely the right time. Morning prayer helps your anxious heart release false timelines and embrace the mystery of God's perfect schedule. Sleep returns as you let go of frustrated waiting and allow peace to settle into your spirit. Even in your weakest moments, the shepherd's provision has not stopped. God's message today speaks softly. I have sustained you through this dry land, and I will lead you to abundance. Psalm 23 reflects his steady hand guiding you forward, even when the path has felt endless. Morning prayer offers you a renewed perspective on his sustaining grace that has carried you thus far. Sleep gently wraps around you as gratitude replaces fear, recognizing his invisible care through every moment. The barren landscape of your spirit may feel lifeless, but God's message today brings this promise. Soon the desert will bloom. Psalm 23's overflowing cup symbolizes not just provision but extravagant, overflowing life. Morning prayer becomes your declaration of trust that new life is being prepared beneath the dryness. Sleep returns as you surrender fully to the assurance that your shepherd knows when and how to open the floodgates of refreshing. As this portion of morning prayer concludes, receive God's message today deep into your spirit. Overflow is coming. Psalm 23 remains your guide through this wilderness, gently leading you toward the abundance that awaits. Anxiety's grip weakens under the power of this promise, and sleepless nights give way to restful confidence. Trust fully in the shepherd who is preparing to turn your barrenness into overflowing rivers of life at exactly the right time. In this season of dryness, your heart may hesitate to speak, unsure whether your words carry any power. But God's message today calls you gently. Declare my truth, even when you feel nothing. Psalm 23 offers you words of life to speak over your soul. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Morning prayer becomes your steady confession, where truth is spoken not because you feel it, but because it remains true regardless of your feelings. Sleep returns as your spirit aligns itself with God's unchanging promises. Anxiety whispers that your declarations are empty when your emotions don't match, that speaking promises you don't feel is dishonest. But God's message today corrects this lie. Speaking, my word, strengthens your faith. Psalm 23's steady rhythm of comfort provides you with words to speak when your own fail. Morning prayer invites you to lift your voice, however softly, and let truth replace uncertainty. Sleep gently arrives as your mind releases the conflict between feeling and faith. When your nights are restless, filled with racing thoughts and what-ifs, your declarations of truth become anchors. God's message today reminds you, my word steadies your mind and quiets your fears. Psalm 23 paints the image of green pastures and still waters, where his voice drowns out the noise of anxiety. Morning prayer allows you to rehearse these truths aloud, speaking life into your own soul as you prepare for rest. Sleep finds you as God's promises begin to settle your restless thoughts. Anxiety thrives on repetition, replaying fears over and over, but God's message today invites you to use repetition for healing. Let my truth fill your mind. Psalm 23's familiar words are meant to be spoken again and again, becoming the melody that calms your heart. Morning prayer gives you permission to speak the same promises daily, allowing truth to sink deeper with each repetition. Sleep returns as your mind becomes filled, not with fearful patterns, but with declarations of God's goodness. Even when it feels like your declarations are powerless against your circumstances, God's message today assures you, "My word never returns empty." Psalm 23 is not a temporary comfort, it is eternal truth. Morning prayer teaches you to trust that every spoken word is planting seeds for future peace. Sleep gently covers you as you release the need to see immediate results, resting in the certainty that His word is always working. Anxiety often pressures you to remain silent, convincing you that speaking truth when you're struggling is hypocrisy. But God's message today encourages you. Speaking my promises in weakness is an act of trust. Psalm 23's steady declarations give you permission to speak from your valley, not just your mountain. Morning prayer becomes your quiet, defiant act of faith, whispering truth even when tears fall. Sleep returns as your voice becomes a tool for peace rather than a hostage to fear. When emotions are dry and energy is low, God's message today offers this simple invitation: speak my name. Sometimes, the most powerful declaration is simply whispering, "The Lord is my shepherd." Psalm 23 gives you these few words to carry you when nothing else rises within. Morning prayer becomes your resting place, where even a faint voice carries great strength. Sleep finds you as the shepherd receives every whisper as a cry of trust. As this portion of morning prayer concludes, let God's message today settle deeply into your heart. My truth spoken from your lips carries power, even in dryness. Psalm 23 remains your script, your confession, and your anchor through every anxious night and every dry season. The shepherd hears every word, and your soul is being strengthened as you speak. Rest tonight knowing that your declarations carry weight in heaven, shaping your heart and preparing you for the fullness He is bringing. Right now, in this very moment, God's presence is near, closer than every anxious thought that tries to rise. God's message today gently calls you. This morning, receive again. Even though dryness lingers and sleep has eluded you, His invitation remains open. Psalm 23 assures you, He restores my soul. Morning prayer becomes your doorway to fresh surrender, where you no longer strive to fix your spiritual state, but simply open your heart to receive what only He can give. Sleep begins to return as you rest in the safety of His unfailing nearness. Anxiety may whisper that you must earn your way back into God's presence, that you must first repair what feels broken. But God's message today speaks freedom. You do not need to repair, only to receive. Psalm 23 portrays a shepherd who initiates restoration, gently leading, patiently waiting, always present. Morning prayer invites you to release the burden of self-correction and simply allow the shepherd's hand to restore what feels lost. Sleep gently settles as you surrender all unfinished striving. When your nights are long and restless, it's easy to believe that God has grown weary of your struggles. But God's message today offers a quiet assurance. I never grow tired of drawing you close. Psalm 23 reveals His enduring care, leading you again and again to still waters. Morning prayer welcomes you into this faithful rhythm of daily renewal. Sleep returns as your soul rests in the certainty of His endless patience. Anxiety often demands certainty before you can relax, pushing you to resolve every question before you feel safe. But God's message today reminds you you can receive peace before the answers arrive. Psalm 23 guides you into green pastures, where rest comes not from understanding everything, but from trusting the one who does. Morning prayer allows you to breathe deeply, receiving peace without conditions. Sleep finds you as you release your grip on needing full clarity. Even in the dryness, your shepherd prepares what you cannot yet see. God's message today assures you, I have already gone before you. Psalm 23 declares, You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. Morning prayer becomes your declaration that His provision exists, even while you wait for your soul to feel full again. Sleep gently wraps around you as you trust His preparation happening in the unseen. Anxiety may try to convince you that receiving again is dangerous, that opening your heart only invites more disappointment. But God's message today whispers courage. It is safe to trust me again. Psalm 23 reflects the shepherd's steady hand, guiding you through every valley, never abandoning you to your fears. Morning prayer invites you to open your heart fully, not because you feel strong, but because His strength holds you. Sleep returns as you lean into the safety of His perfect love. Even your smallest willingness to receive is met with great joy in heaven. God's message today affirms, "Your yes, even whispered, is precious to me." Psalm 23's still waters refresh you not because you arrive perfectly ready, but because you simply come. Morning prayer honors even your faintest surrender, and sleep finds you as you rest in the simplicity of showing up, ready to receive what He freely gives. As this portion of morning prayer concludes, let God's message today settle deeply within you. This morning, receive again. Psalm 23 remains your guide into restoration, peace, and gentle surrender. Anxiety loosens its grip when you open your hands to receive instead of striving to achieve. Rest tonight, fully held by the shepherd who delights in filling your soul again, no matter how dry the season has felt. His peace is flowing even now. In this sacred space, let your soul pause and reflect on the journey you've walked through these days of dryness, anxiety, and sleepless nights. God's message today continues to speak softly into your heart. I am with you, even here. As you bring your heart before Him one more time in this morning prayer, allow these questions to settle gently into your spirit and open the door for even deeper restoration. Where have I mistaken my dryness for distance from God? How has anxiety tried to distort His nearness by convincing me that silence means absence? Can I begin today to trust that even in what feels empty, God is actively drawing me closer into His care? Let His truth breathe into your soul now through these scriptural affirmations. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Psalm 23:1. He restores my soul. Psalm 23:3-3. His peace guards my heart against anxiety. Philippians 4:7, paraphrased. Speak these words aloud even if your voice trembles. Each time you declare them, you realign your spirit with His unshakable truth, allowing His peace to fill every dry place. And now, beloved, hear this gentle call to action. If this morning prayer has met you in your place of dryness, anxiety, or sleeplessness, do not hold it alone. Share this message with someone else walking through their own desert. Leave your reflections, your whispered prayers, your victories and struggles in the comments below. Together, let us build a community that carries one another to the still waters of our shepherd's presence. You are not forgotten. You are being restored, layer by layer, breath by breath, moment by moment. And your overflow is coming. Rest deeply in that truth today.